Hi, I'm Mark Wybrow and this is the Electronic Cafe, the channel for the lovers of electronic music.
And I'm Andy McNabb, so let's get started. Hello and welcome to another fact-packed, ear-filling episode of the Electronic Cafe. If you haven't subscribed to this show yet, please do so. You can also find us on our Facebook community page where like-minded people like me and Mark are talking about music all the time, so you're not missing out on any hot new tunes coming out. Also, you can find us on Instagram, on Twitter, as I say, and on Facebook, as I mentioned earlier. So, join us there, and I'd love to talk to you about music. In this particular episode, wow, we're talking about a band that just kind of hit everyone that was around in the 80s like a thunderbolt of energy, great tunes, a massive amount of cool music. Cause and Controversy, which just elevated their fame. So we are going to be looking at the incredible Frankie Goes to Hollywood, and also looking at some amazing new music again in a brilliant hot stuff section. Can't wait to talk to you about those. So sit back, chill out, and just let's all go and look at what made Frankie Goes to Hollywood such a mega success. So, Frankie Goes to Hollywood. So this band, this just puts it into context, right? Had so many massive big hits, like four of the biggest songs that made up the 80s. That I'm going to talk about how the band formed, and then go into a little bit of depth on some of their core tracks of their album, which is incredible. Welcome to the Pleasure Dome. I think this bunch of incredible artists, backed by the power of ZTT and Trevor Horn, deserves to go in a little bit of depth about, some of the biggest songs that made up the 80s. So I'm going to do that. Yeah, they were in an English synth pop band formed in Liverpool in 1980. I think the group's obviously very well known for obviously Holly Johnson, Paul Rutherford on backing vocals, Peter Gill on drums and percussion. There was Mark O'Toole on bass and Brian Nash on guitar. The group's 1983 debut single, Relax, was actually banned by the BBC, I think in 84, while it was at number 6 in the charts. And then it's because Mike Reid apparently claimed that it was disgusting, etc., immoral, something like that. It's the best thing he could have done for them, because then it just made the album or the single go to number 1 for 5 consecutive weeks, and it went on to enjoy prolonged chart success throughout that year, ultimately becoming the 7th best selling UK single of all time. So thanks, Mike, great work. It also won the 1985 Brit Award for Best British Single, their debut album. This beauty, Welcome to the Pleasure Dome, reached number 1 in the UK in 84 with advanced sales of more than 1 million copies. After the follow-up success of Two Tribes and the Power of Love, the group became the only second act in history, let's think about it, the history of the UK charts to reach number 1 with their first 3 singles. The first being fellow Liverpudlians, ironically, Jerry and the Pacemakers, way back in the 60s. On the B side to the group's, I'm trying to remember their first single, Johnson explained the group's name derived from a page from New Yorker magazine, featuring a headline, Frankie Goes to Hollywood, with alongside a picture of Frank Sinatra. Brian Nash, from the guitarist, said the band looked up to Echo and the Bunnymen, OND, Teardrop Explodes, adding that was the music from Liverpool, but from their generation. You would see these people walking around town like you'd see Ian McCulloch getting on a bus. In February '83, the group was invited to record a video for Relax by the Channel 4 show The Tube, much missed for old farts like me. After the broadcast, the Peel session was then repeated on a radio, and a new session recorded for the BBC, and I think it comprised of Welcome to the Pleasure Dome, The Only Star in Heaven and Relax. These performances, along with a repeat of the Tube video, actually was what convinced Trevor Horn to sign the group for his new label ZTT Records in May 1983. So unusually, I'm going to just dissect this album a little bit more than I usually do on previous EC episodes, just because some of the tracks are such standout songs. So I love this, and I mentioned earlier, on the 11th of January '84, BBC Radio 1 disc jockey Mike Reed was playing the record on his show, and he noticed the front cover designed by, I think it was Yvonne Gilbert, and he became outraged by the overtly sexual nature of both the record sleeve and the printed lyrics, which prompted him to remove the disc from the turntable live on air, branding it obscene. 2 days later, almost 3 days after the single's initial release, and just 8 days after the group's Top of the Pops appearance, the BBC banned the record from all its TV and radio outlets. And the upshot of that was, it shot straight to #1 in the UK charts and stayed there for 5 weeks, during which time the BBC could not feature the nation's best-selling single on Top of the Pops. Great move, BBC. Nah. The BBC finally lifted its ban on Relax at the end of '84 to allow the band to perform the track on, I think it was a Christmas edition of Top of the Pops, because it had been, aside from Band Aid, the biggest selling single of that year. So, Relax remained in the charts when the follow-up, Two Tribes, was released in May of the same year, in '84. The anti-conflict song was given an aggressively topical nuclear war slant, featuring sirens, the unmistakable voice of Patrick Allen, and I remember it very well, who had voiced the British government's actual nuclear warning ads, Protect and Survive, 2 years earlier. And another innovative electronic backing. It went straight into the UK charts at #1 and stayed there for 9 weeks, with sales exceeding 1.5 million copies and becoming one of the top 30 best-selling records in the UK ever. Right? Let's just think about it. Ever. Directed by, and I remember the video, it was directed by Kevin Godley of Lon and Cream. The video featured lookalikes of Ronnie Reagan and Chernyenko wrestling in a marquee, while band members and other laid bets on the outcome. Ultimately, the audience, consisting of other sort of lookalike world leaders, were brought into the fight, and eventually Earth was seen to explode. So Two Tribes was a successful single in its own right, but its reign at the top of the charts was made even more notable by the continuing success of its predecessor, Relax, and made a natural decline down the charts by May '84. But on the release of Two Tribes, its sales began to increase again, to the extent that Frankie Goes to Hollywood held the top 2 spots in the UK charts during July '84, the first active group to do so since the early '60s. And I remember distinctly, the release of Two Tribes coincided with a brilliant and iconic t-shirt marketing campaign. You remember those great t-shirts, that slogan says, Frankie says, say, war, hide yourself, and Frankie say, relax, don't do it. I remember those, and they were really baggy, but loved them. So again, from Relax to Two Tribes, these guys were creating history really fast.
When two tribes go to war, one is all that you can score. Score the goal, score the goal. When two tribes go to war, one is all that you can score. Working for the black guys. Cowboy number one. A born again, poor man's son. Poor man's son. On the air, America.
So the final single or track I want to talk about on this now masterpiece of an album was The Power of Love. This was the third single at the end of '84. It was released, and unlike the earlier singles, this was a much slower paced ballad, but it also went to number one at the end of the year, and making the band the first act for 2 decades, again since Jerry and the Pacemakers, to achieve chart toppers with its first 3 releases. The video wasn't banned on this occasion, but still caused trouble for the group because it depicts a nativity scene, and on first showing didn't feature any members of the band, and was subsequently added as picture framing. The song's release was preceded by an advertising campaign that cheekily declared it to be the band's 3rd number 1 single, as if it was a fait accompli. And the Band Aid project, for which Johnson recorded a message for the B-side, meant that Frankie Goes to Hollywood managed only 1 week at the top, this time being replaced by Do They Know It's Christmas. But still incredible. And then, Welcome to the Pleasure Dome, the title track for the album, was released as a full single in March '85. Early promotional posters for the single proclaimed it as their 4th number 1, even prior to the single's release. So they obviously had mystical powers to see into the future. However, the single did peak at number 2. The 12-inch singles featured Greek mythology, Samuel Taylor, Coldridge spoke introduction, and Jeffrey Palmer, who was in Butterflies, narrates on the second 12-inch known as the Fruitiness Mix. I think only one new track appeared in the next 18 months, which was Disneyland. It was released on ZTT Records. It's on their Zang Tum Tub sampled album late in '85. But make no mistake, this album made a massive mark in the 80s musical history and continues to do so now. I mean, I was playing it earlier and it still sounds powerful, energetic, incredible production as you'd expect from Mr. Trevor Horn and ZTT. If you've never heard this album, it's an absolute must-have in your collection. It's a masterpiece. Check it out.
I'll protect you from the hooded claw. Keep the vampires from your door. When the chips are down, I'll be around with my undying, death-defying love for you. Envy will hurt itself. Let yourself be beautiful. Really can't afford it. Shooting stars never stop, even when they reach the top. Shooting stars never stop, even when they reach the top. There goes a supernova, what a pushover, yeah. There goes a supernova, what a pushover. We're a long way from home. Welcome to the Pleasure Dome.
Liverpool is Frankie Goes to Hollywood's 2nd studio album, released in 1986. It will be the band's final album, followed by a flurry of lawsuits from ZTT. This time the album's production duties were handled by Trevor Horn's engineer, Stephen Lipson, who urged the band to play their own instruments on this album. Famously, Trevor Horn replaced many of the band's performances and arrangements on the first album, Welcome to the Pleasure Dome, with his own session musicians. Liverpool features a heavier rock sound than its predecessor. In more ways than one, it was as if they were moving from Technicolor to black and white, with Anton Corbijn doing the album's photography this time around. The album was a commercial disappointment compared to the band's previous efforts. Critics generally panned the album, but I really liked this album. It had a rockier, harder sound, but with, of course, the famous ZTT production and electronic synth wizardry throughout it. Liverpool was an excellent follow-up, and I think it perhaps suffered from high expectations. Warriors of the Wasteland, Rage Hard and Watching the Wildlife are all belters, along with some great album tracks. It was 8 songs and a tighter single LP rather than a double album like its predecessor. Production is fantastic, Stephen Lipson did a great job, but then again that's not surprising as we all know he produced Propaganda's A Secret Wish album while Trevor Horn was tied up working on the Frankie Goes to Hollywood debut album. Go on, give it a listen, reappraise it, let us know what you think. It's well worth checking out and I think it is a really strong album.
Break the chains, we can rise up again. Once we've erased the nature of the game. Don't you forget what you give is what you get. Take love away, there's nothing better not let the side down.
Despite only lasting 4 years, from 1983 to 1986, and making just 2 albums and 7 singles, make no mistake, Frankie Goes to Hollywood were absolutely huge. So big in fact, for a time, they had to become tax exiles. They were to the 80s what I guess the Sex Pistols were to the 70s. They were cocky and belligerent and controversial, and their pop-punk disco took over the world. And after the Liverpool album, due to a number of factors and tensions within the group, it all imploded on itself and Holly Johnson left and signed a solo deal with MCA Records. ZTT maintained that they had invested heavily in the group and legal action commenced. The lawsuit was bitterly fought, exposing the inner workings of the ZTT Frankie machine, which after 2 years the High Court found in Johnson's favour, saying that their contract had been highly restrictive and it constituted an unreasonable restraint of trade. The court case also effectively freed the remaining members of Frankie Goes to Hollywood from their ZTT contract. Sound familiar? If you recall, the same thing happened to Propaganda. You really should read Brian Nasher Nash's book, Nasher Says Relax, a fantastic no-holds-barred insight into everything Frankie Goes to Hollywood. As he said, it's like going to a party in 1983 and coming home in 1986. So, let's not let history diminish what Frankie Goes to Hollywood were. They were everything that a pop band should be.
People go home in the rain, familiar faces on the train, running scared and staying safe. If you live by the sword, that's your own reward. So don't walk with me, watching the wildlife, the beast within you. Together, sculptures and sorrow, with love like to follow. One sweet head of Apollo. Rage hard, it's light. Rage hard, doing it right, doing it right. Rage hard, against the dark. Rage hard.
So, welcome to the latest Hot Stuff section. It's great that Mark and I are doing these more frequently again. I really miss telling you guys about hot new tunes that are out there right now. This one's been out for a little while, but it's an album that as I've got to play it more, it's just really grown on me, and that is Blue Weekend, the third album by the fabulous Wolf Alice. And it's been welcomed with rave reviews, and I think it had a score of 96 on a review aggregator. I think NME has held it as a stone cold masterpiece, and The Guardian says it's the sound of massive ambitions exceptionally fulfilled. It's an intensely emotional but more assured record according to The Independent, and a history book cementing document of a band at the peak of their power, says DIY Mag. So, you know, real high praise for this band. I think both of Wolf Alice's previous albums have hit number 2 on the UK charts. Their 2015 debut, My Love Is Cool, was nominated for the coveted Mercury Music Prize, but the follow-up actually took home the trophy, which was called Visions of a Life. Sorry, I had to go back in my memory cells there. But Blue Weekend is just a winning example of how a band has to be able to do a bit of everything really in order to thrive in 2021's sort of genre agnostic ecosystem. It's a record that does a bit of everything really well. I think that was a massive characteristic of their last album, you know, sort of careening from guitars to hot howling guitars to atmospheric sort of indie pop. But I think with this album 4 years on, they've not only expanded their sonic horizons, but they seem to have a tighter grip on dynamics and songcraft. I mean, Blue Weekend is a beautifully paced 40 minutes that makes great use of contrast. I think what's really striking to me is how Wolf Alice can pivot in style from track to track, even moment to moment, without kind of losing their footing. I think instead of feeling like a mixed bag, it just sounds so, what's the word, coherent and convincing. Just as Ellie has elevated a game as a vocalist, songwriter and presence, her bandmates have kind of caught in a kind of vortex of how she's elevating herself. They've all gone along with her. They've upped their game. I think, you know, the drummer Joel, he kind of hits the kit hard, but he does some great backup singing. Joff Oddy, the guitarist, is given room to show some very cool finger picking skills. You know, they didn't get to be one of the most fated English bands around by kind of just returning to glory days of Britpop, but they don't dismiss their heritage either. Blue Weekend is without doubt the biggest and best example of how Wolf Alice are putting their own spin on what a celebrated UK band should be. I would say this has got a touch of Spirit of Eden about it. And what I mean is it doesn't sound anything like Spirit of Eden, but it has that first few times you kind of go, they've changed their sound a bit. Don't know if I like it. Oh, actually, this is quite clever. And as you get to play it more, it just cements more into your psyche. I'm now playing this album a lot. I think it's amazing. Check it out. I say Blue Weekend by the fabulous Wolf Alice.
Unhinged, I wind it up and this honeybee stings. If you think I was a puppet on strings, wind her up and this honeybee stings. Something to show.
My first Hot Stuff album choice is the new Gary Kemp solo album called In Solo. Not strictly an all-out electronic album, but Gary Kemp, as part of Spandau Ballet, was certainly one of the first new romantic electronic dance bands in the very early 80s, and Gary Kemp is of course certainly one of the 80s icons. Straight up, I wasn't a huge Spandau Ballet fan after their first two albums, but I've seen Spandau Ballet a few times along with Gary Kemp playing solo. In Solo is his second solo album, and the first being Little Bruises back in 1995. The album covers two dominant themes: solitude, which I guess we've all experienced in lockdown, and his growing obsession with life seen through a rear-view mirror, and how the past infects our present. Gary is looking back on his experiences as a younger self, being out and about in London, going to see Bowie, being in a band, being part of the London Blitz Club scene. But among the melancholia is a glimmer of optimism. The album also has appearances from Roger Taylor from Queen and Lee Harris from Talk Talk. Kemp's attachment to Spandau Ballet and their long goodbye may be the reason that it has taken 25 years to release more solo work, but this album is certainly worth checking out. I wasn't expecting to like this album as much as I did. It is a gorgeous collection of tunes, arranged and produced beautifully, and the best thing he has done in decades. And without doubt, his recent playing in Nick Mason's Saucerful of Secrets band has given it a very Pink Floyd influenced sound. Do check it out, give it a whirl.
You're in tomorrow, you're undeterred. There ain't any who would stand in your way. You've spoken out and clearly made yourself heard, while I'm barely working out what to say. Baby, it's you. You're always up in front and ahead of the game. Well, you're running on the power of innocence. You're just running on the power of innocence.
And my second Hot Stuff recommendation is by the mightily talented Richard Norris, and this album is called Hypnotic Response. Just before I dive into this, during the course of last year, this guy, I mean, he's incredible. He's been quietly releasing some sort of meditative masterpieces via his Group Mind label and Bandcamp page under, I think they're called Music for Healing. He's made available digitally long form pieces. I mean, we're talking 20-minute compositions, drug light drones, rag remedies, collisions of new age and sort of cosmic, with all the proceeds going to the mental health charity Mind. So nice work, my friend. Some of his shorter works have made it to bespoke vinyl, such as the recent Beautiful Elements set. 2020 also saw the official pressing of Paul Wolford's epic reimagining of Flotation, a Balearic Benchmark, co-produced by Richard with the incredible Dave Ball as the Grid, celebrating 30 years since the tune first blew the world away. He's also, I'm going to give him a mega plug here, I didn't realise until I dug a bit deeper, he's one half of Beyond the Wizard's Sleeve. If you haven't heard this album, actually, so sorry, I'm squeezing this in. So this is The Soft Balance. I bought this a few years ago and just fell in love with it and told my friends, you know, the title might put something off, but it's fucking brilliant. And you know, a host of, and so one half of Beyond the Wizard's Sleeve, he's had a ton of well-received ambient releases, and he's back with this sort of motoric, trance-inducing electronic groove of kind of hypnotic response, fully influenced by German 70s music, psychedelia. There's like a hypnotic repetition. I think this came from an old Korg 55 drum machine. These tracks veer from the expansive 11-minute workout of Arca to the mesmeric sequences of In Flight, from the propulsive rhythm of Free Ride to the electronic lullaby La Luna. It's a widescreen and mesmerising set, and it's got this kind of weird sort of retina-altering artwork and great vinyl. So this is worth diving in deep. Definitely one to just check out and I say really get your ears into it, because it's a great piece of work. So again, this is my second recommendation for Hot Stuff. Richard Norris, you know, the very talented guy that he is, for Hypnotic Response. And so if you haven't heard the joint masterpiece that he did, this is worth checking out as well. Sorry mate, I've got to sneak that in. Mark will try and edit this out, but it's just too good an album. So I can't remember when it was produced, but it was a few years ago now, but that's great. This is very cool. This is recent, so check it out.
Clearly, Andy has found a new covert way of slipping in even more Hot Stuff selections, so I'd better be quick. Our second Hot Stuff album selection is Synesthesia by Anne Clark. For those that don't know, Anne Clark is the London electronic artist whose music is as much literary and spoken word and poetry as it is electronic. It is innovative and it is groundbreaking. 2020 was Anne Clark's 40th anniversary in music, but it turned out to be a very unsettling year for her, and rather than releasing another best of compilation, she decided in this special anniversary year to invite young and innovative musicians, producers and DJs to take her material, all of her material, not the most obvious numbers, and not just remix them, but to completely rework them and reinterpret them. Both Mark Reeder and Rusty Egan have worked with Anne Clark in the past, but the results of this new compilation are fresh, exciting and contemporary by a new generation of artists who she has influenced in electronic music. The results are stunning. Do go check this album out.
Take control.
So that's it for another fact-packed, music-filled episode of the Electronic Cafe. I hope you loved Mark and my tribute to the incredible Frankie Goes to Hollywood. Hope you love the Hot Stuff albums we recommend. Let us know. And if you're finding any new stuff yourself, drop it onto our Facebook page so you can share it with like-minded music nuts like Mark and I. So really appreciate all your support, your kind words. We're growing fast, so that's why we appreciate you guys being subscribers and part of something very special. Look forward to seeing you very soon on the next edition of Electronic Cafe. Bye bye for now.
Stay safe, take care, and thanks for watching the Electronic Cafe. We'll see you again soon. Bye bye.